Hi, Tracy here, also known as Mercy Tiara, with another episode of Find Your Mojo. Each episode will give you a prompt or a challenge to get your creative juices flowing and to get you scrapping and documenting all your memories. This time, the prompt is to start with a photo strip. Photo strips are one of my favorite things to work with in my scrapbooks, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I love photo strips and how to use them as a starting point. So I'm going to start by showing you how to make a photo strip out of just regular photos. So these photos are printed at 2.8 by 2.8 inches, and if you have a home printer that prints onto 4x6 paper like mine does, I have an Epson PictureMate charm. When you choose two photos, they will probably print like this, one on top of one on top of another. They may also print side by side. And so if that's the case, then it helps you out a little bit because two of them are already connected to one another. If that's the case, what you can do is just cut your other photo, the one that doesn't connect to the other ones, and just glue it onto the, overlap it so that, see how I left a large white strip there? I didn't need quite that much, but just enough to run a line of glue, and then make sure that the space that you're leaving between the top two photos and the bottom two photos is about the same, and that the outline around the outside of it is about the same too. Leaving a border on your photos does help to make it feel more like an actual photo strip. This is obviously a lot bigger than the photo strips that we used to get in those little booths, the little photo booths that spat out a photo strip at the end, and it's also fewer photos. You could go ahead and add more photos if you wanted to. Or you could also have them be, running horizontal instead of stacked on top of one another. I really love a vertical photo strip. And because of the colors in this photo, basically what I did when I chose these three photos is I put them all through a filter in iPhoto. I don't usually use the filters in iPhoto. Usually if I'm going to use filters, I'll use them in Instagram. But in this case, these photos I never did post to Instagram. And when I looked at all my options for putting filters on them, I really liked this one. It was called Instant. And so I've been using this filter a little bit more since I've discovered how much I like it. It basically makes everything look kind of like a murky blue, and then like the darks and shadows and stuff look like a deep inky blue, and then everything else is sort of softened. And I really love that look for this series of photos about my daughter reading, because she's so peaceful there and so still. And so you see me just taking some paper, and I drew inspiration from the colors in the photo. So there are those navy blue colors that I mentioned come from the filter that I have. And so her book cover and my couch, which is actually brown, looks a bluish color, and the shadows look all bluey. And so this Fancy Pants collection called Millie and June has some really beautiful deep, deep blues that are almost a purpley color. They're really, really pretty. And then also her skin tone is really similar to the peach color that's in that collection. And so I thought that combination was really nice. And her shirt is actually a mint green color too, although once you put the filter on it, you can't quite tell that. It was mostly the peach and the dark blue that I was leaning towards. And because I'm working with this photo strip, which is such an unusual shape, or it's a distinctive shape, if not unusual, for working with photos, I'm going to draw inspiration from the shape of the photo as well as from the colors. So you saw me choose the Millie and June collection from Fancy Pants, mostly because of the colors in that collection. And it's also a very soft, girly type of a collection as well. And I am scrapbooking my daughter, so it worked thematically as well, but it was mostly the colors. But now I'm choosing my design based on the shape of the photos. So I want a design that's going to really emphasize the vertical nature of this photo strip. And I'm going to go a little ways down this path before I change my mind about the design. At first, I thought I would put that large strip of pattern paper from the collection across the back and then have it not span the full width of the 12 by 12. So by making it, I think it's 10.5 by 12, it becomes a vertical rectangle instead of a square. And then I'm going to mount the whole layout on that piece of navy blue cardstock that I just grabbed from my stash. And I just picked it because it was a very similar, it's not an exact match, but it's as similar as I could find in my stash. I don't have an extensive collection of papers and cardstock, so I have to use what I have. And it's a pretty close match. So again, with another vertical strip of pattern paper here, and I thought that that would really emphasize, again, that vertical nature of the photo. And I'm not really loving this, so I'm kind of struggling with it a little bit. So while I struggle, I'm going to tell you why I love photo strips so much. Photo strips portray the passage of time. So if Sophie was in very different positions in each of these pictures, this photo strip would tell a story of how active she was. But because she's almost the same in each pose, it tells the story of her stillness. And so even though each of those poses is very, very similar to one another, and you might think, well, why would you include all three of those? Because it really doesn't add anything to the story that I'm trying to tell, which is that Sophie was reading by the window and it made me happy. It actually does add to my story because these photos were taken in succession of one another. And in the time that I was taking the photos, she didn't even notice I was taking them. She was so absorbed in her book. And so this, without me having to say how still she was and build that into my journaling, this photo strip tells the story of how I shot. And there were actually 7 or 8 photos. These were just 3 of the better ones. I shot a bunch of photos and she didn't even look up from her book. And so that tells me that she was sitting there very still for the whole time that I was shooting. And so I find that a photo strip tells a passage of time over a very brief period. So it's not like a time lapse or something that tells a story over a good long chunk of time, but it's just sort of in this moment she was very still. And we've all seen those photo strips of people being really goofy and making funny faces, and that in that way, a photo strip can also tell the story of high energy and lots of moving. But in this case, my photo strip tells the story of Sophie's stillness and how absorbed she was in her reading. And so that's what I really love about photo strips, is that they can tell that part of the story in a static picture, as opposed to, I don't have a video. So this is a nice way to show how still she was. So I'm still working on this original design idea that I had, which was to have that greenish, that mint green background pattern paper down the center, and then have a strip of blue on either side from the cardstock behind. And then my plan was to design my page around that, and so that it would all be contained within the green pattern paper. I'm really not liking this. And even as I do it, I'm not liking it. And I've said before, if you follow me on my own YouTube channel, that I will sometimes follow something quite a ways into the process before I decide to give up on it. And what I'm doing right here, you see me not doing anything, is I'm just kind of looking at it and thinking. And so I want to know, sometimes I want to follow a process further along before I change my mind, just because sometimes once you go a little bit further and add a few more things and have another idea, it'll look better. And so I don't want to give up. I don't want to be too hasty about changing my mind on the design of this one, but it's really, I'm kind of a little bit blocked creatively. I know I want to use the line of the photo as my inspiration, but I feel like it's just not interesting enough. So I thought that another way to emphasize the vertical in a layout is to have other vertical lines in on your page. And so I thought I might be able to have a big chunk of paper be that mint, and then a smaller chunk of the paper, but on a with a vertical line, be another pattern paper. And I thought maybe I could use this heart motif, this strip of heart paper, to run to kind of like span between the line where those two pattern papers meet, kind of like this. And so what I like about this second piece of pattern paper is that it's just as calm as the other pattern paper. And remember, I'm trying to capture Sophie's calmness that morning. And so I don't want to use something too busy. This is the exact same pattern, but it's a tinier scale. So the hearts on this paper are a little bit smaller than the hearts on the mint paper, and different colors. So instead of white hearts on mint paper, these are that really dark blue hearts on white paper. And I like the similarity of these papers. I think that it lends itself to these two papers being combined in this way. So I'm leaving this mint paper I just have to check the measurements of it. For some reason, I trimmed it a little bit smaller than 12 inches. So I'm going to make it be 12 and a quarter. Or no, 11 and 3/4. I'm trimming off 1/4 of an inch on the bottom of both of these. And I had to make sure that the hearts were pointing the right way when I trimmed it. So I trimmed that white piece of paper to 12 inches, or I guess it's 11 and 3/4 inches by 4 inches wide. And I'm really liking that design quite a bit better. And I thought I would maybe run some strips across the top and the bottom. Now, as I do this, I'm very aware of the fact that this takes away from the vertical nature of this page. And my whole idea for this page was that I wanted to run with the vertical nature of the photo strips. So this I'm just doing very tentatively because I'm not entirely sure that I'm going to want to keep this, but it doesn't hurt to cut the strips and lay them there and take a look at it from different angles and add things and take things away, and then decide if you want to leave them there or take them away. So I pulled out one of my scallop border punches. This is one of my favorites. It's a large scallop border punch. And the problem with it is that the shape is too large for you to really see. You just see a little bit of two scallops, and it just doesn't provide any real continuity from the top to the bottom. And so I've decided to use this smaller scallop punch, which is by Stampin' Up. And I like it quite a bit better because you see more of the pattern above and below, and that allows that repetition and continuity to show from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. And it helps you have that vertical line that, again, I'm really going for. So on a just like the spur of the moment, or just off the top of my head, I thought, well, why do I always run those strips horizontally? Maybe I could run those strips vertically in this case, but that's just too much vertical stuff going on. It's just like a little bit overboard on the vertical theme. And so I'm not going to do that. And then I thought maybe I could put my journaling on little strips of washi tape below the photo, but no, I'm not going to do that. And then I have these strips cut. And so I'm thinking, what else could I do with these strips? I could layer them behind the scalloped black pattern paper. And all of these papers are from Millie and June from Fancy Pants. But that's just not working either. And so, yes, and then there's a lot of things not working today for me. One of them is my tape runner. I just used it wrong and made the tape come out of it instead of staying inside. So I'm actually going to switch tape runners because I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong with this one. So anyhow, I did get my adhesive down on that paper. So this is real life scrapbooking, like sometimes things just don't go your way. And speaking of making mistakes and things not going your way, I just ran the adhesive down the front of that piece of paper instead of down the back. So here I go. I'm going to cut another strip 4 inches wide, and I think it's already cut to 11 and 11 3/4. And then I just switched to my ATG tape runner because I'm just, I know how to use it. Yeah. It's, actually, I did not trim that larger piece down to the right length, which is 11 3/4. So I just had to do that. So again, this is real life scrapbooking here. I don't always do everything exactly perfectly, as you can see, but that's okay. Sometimes, especially when you feel like you've lost your mojo, or if you've been away from scrapbooking for a while and then you come back to it, which is sort of the case for me for this one. I had gone an entire week without scrapbooking, which I know might not sound like very much to some people, but I usually scrapbook every couple of days. So this was a long gap for me. And sometimes I do feel a little bit rusty when I come back to it. And so, I made a couple of mistakes on this one, but we all make mistakes and that's okay. So I've taken out the embellishments that are part of the Millie and June collection. So I have the tags here that I'm looking through right now. And I took out those little labels that come in the tag pack. And I thought about using them somehow, and I just put them out and you saw me take them back. And then I took out this other little tag with the stripes on part of it, and then kind of like a diagonal line across it. And I have some other pieces from the ephemera kit as well, or the ephemera pack that you can get to go along with this collection. And then you saw me take out that 6x6 piece of paper and then another one. And the 6x6 paper pads, I haven't always bought the 6x6 paper pads when I buy a collection, but this time I got both. And I really like having the option to have the smaller scale of the pattern, especially when you're layering things together like this. So I want to layer those two papers in a sort of like a casual way, because I have this really structured background with the 4 inches of the white pattern paper, and then the rest of it is all the mint pattern paper with the scallop running up the edge, and then the nice border with the blue. I'm just looking at my gel pens here to see, I have swatches of them all, because I want to write out the word book. But I'm not going to actually end up liking that. So here I write out the word book. And my thought was that I could cut that out and put it over the word girl, because I have 2 daughters, so I cannot put "for my fave girl" on any layout ever. I thought about maybe making the word book out of Nuvo drops, but they just don't have a fine enough tip. So I'm going to just stop with that idea and move to something else a little bit later. So as I was talking about the pattern paper behind the photo, so I want that pattern paper to be casual like that, meaning at a bit of an angle, it's slightly askew, because there's so much structure on the background, and most of my layouts are not too structured and lined up and symmetrical. And so by laying those 2 pieces of pattern paper so that they overlap in a casual way on a bit of an angle from the rest of the layout, it just gives a more casual look, and it also helps my photo look a little bit more like it belongs on a casual angle as well, because I do plan to place that photo strip on an angle and not straight up and down, lined up with the line that runs behind it in the scallop black paper. So I'm outlining the entire layout, and then I'm also outlining the 2 large pieces of pattern paper, which are not exactly 6x6. I did take a little bit off of them. And then after I outlined them, I noticed that they actually look quite a bit better when I layer them so that they're not oriented the same way, so that one is a horizontal rectangle and one is a vertical rectangle. Now they're both pretty close to square anyways, but it just makes them layer a little bit more nicely. So I'm going to use that flare badge to cover up the word girl, and I'm still thinking about how I'm going to get the word book on that flare badge. It's not going to be by writing it with a gold marker. That's all I know at this point. And so you saw me having a look at the puffy stickers that come in this collection, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to get my title on. And I noticed that the packaging of the Fancy Pants ephemera and tags was actually quite nice. It's kind of like a very, very soft green. It's similar to the background paper, but a little bit lighter in color, and it has tiny little hearts on it, just like the two background papers. So I thought that I might be able to use it as a anchor for my title. And my title is going to be fairly long, and I really want the title to be the main attraction on this layout. And so I knew that there were these beautiful words in gold that said "my girl." And so I wanted to incorporate them into my title, and I wanted my title to look beautifully designed. And so I wanted the pieces to all kind of overlap with one another. And so I thought I would put "my girl loves books" or "my girl loves to read." And so I'm just trying to arrange the word loves so that it's nestled. I want all the words to be nestled in with one another. So I'm putting love so that it's right against the descender in the G, and then I'm putting to and read right here beside it. And you'll notice that this little piece of cardstock or chipboard, I guess, that I cut off of the packaging is just a wee bit too small for what I want to do. And now I'm taking stickers from each of those different colors and putting them around so that basically I want to bring some of the blue puffy stickers up to the gold, and then I want to bring some gold stickers down to where the blue is so that it all looks like it all belongs, so it doesn't just kind of go harshly from gold to blue. I want it to have some gold on the other side of the blue and some blue on the other side of the gold as well. So there's that piece of packaging, and I noticed that the packaging that came with the ephemera pack is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to use that. I just brought it over to my sewing machine here, and I'm going to run some stitches just around it. And the top thread is blue, and the bottom thread is white, because I always keep white in my bobbin just because it's easier I just refill a whole bunch of whites and leave them and keep on replacing my bobbin as I run out. So that's what that looks like. And then I am also going to go ahead and sew around the layout as well. So I'm sewing down, and because I double sewed on that little card, I'm going to double sew on all of these pieces as well, which just means I'm going to go over it twice. And so I'm going along the white patterned paper there. And then I'm just going to go all the way around the outside of it. Sorry, I had my phone a little bit too close to my sewing machine as I was sewing, and so I kept actually hitting my phone with the cardstock. Yeah, so that's how that looks, and I really like it. I'm purposely sewing on the other side of my outline. You'll notice that I've already outlined on this one. I don't usually do both. I usually do one or the other, but I just felt like I wanted more sewing on this. So sewing around the outside of it is a good way to just add some stitching to tie in all the stitching that you do elsewhere and make it all seem like there's lots of stitching on your layout. And so I'm going to layer these two pieces of paper casually. I'm really not thinking about it too much. I just need them to be behind the photo and a little bit on an angle. And now here's that packaging that I'm going to use for my title. And I already have my title set out on waxed paper, which I designed using the other piece of packaging, but this is exactly the same shape. It's just a wee bit bigger. And so as I do this, I'm not realizing that I'm going to end up with too much of a gap at the bottom if I do it this way. So I am going to space this out a little bit better after I kind of get a little bit further along in this process. And the word loves is way too crooked here. So here, notice that I'm noticing that there's just too much. I'm putting the I on there. And then see how under to read, there's just too much space. I had designed it to squeeze it into that smaller card, and now that I have a larger card to fit it on, I don't need to squeeze it quite so much. So I'm moving girl down a little bit. I'm also going to move my down so it doesn't have to be hanging onto the stitches quite as much. I really like how my and girl nestle together like that, like the Y and the G just kind of mirror each other or look like nice companions to one another. And so now I'm writing the word read. I'm just spelling it out. And I'm shifting my design over a little bit just to compensate for the fact that I've got a little bit more space, and I don't want to cover the T like that. It looks too distracting or something. So I'm just going to move everything down a little bit. And then I've got this space between loves and read. And I'm not entirely sure that I like it, but once I put that arrow in there, whoo, I love it. Because that arrow brings some gold and breaks up all of the blue that would be together if just loves and reads were right beside each other. I'm taking some pictures of this because I like it so much. So that's what I'm doing there. And now I'm just going to position it like that. And before I do that, I do have to put this paper down on the background so that it makes it easier for me to glue down my photo and my title so that they work together. And I decided to use dimensional adhesive for my photo strip just to pop it up off the page a little bit. That will give me a nice interesting little shadow around the edges of it. And it also just pops it up a little bit to allow for the dimension that is added with using the piece of chipboard packaging for the title. And so you'll notice that I didn't put any pop dots on the area that would overlap with the packaging, and that's because the packaging will hold that space for me. And so I'm just going to glue it down so that the Fancy Pants logo is covered. As cute as that logo is, I love their logo. I thought about putting, you know what's wrong with that star? Right now I have a diagonal line that runs from the M in my to the D and the star in read. And did I say vertical? I meant a diagonal. I like that diagonal line, and by putting the star over in that empty space beside the T, it takes away from the diagonal design of that. This way it kind of just diagonally moves from my to girl to loves to read and then into the two photos that are like the second two photos. And now I'm over here working on this little cluster of embellishments that includes the tag that says for my fave. And I'm going to make it say for my fave book instead of for my fave girl because, I don't play favorites with my kids. I try not to anyways. They each have their moments, right? So I put a little tiny blue puffy sticker on the heart of that flare badge. And I want again, keeping with the vertical nature of this, I want the string on that tag to go up. I want it to be vertical. So I just used my tiny attacher to staple the strings so that they stayed in an upright position. And then I just went back to my sewing machine. I'm sorry that I didn't show the process, but I just went back to my sewing machine and did some back and forth stitching that attaches that for my fave right to the layout. And then I can pull up the edges of it and make it a little bit more dimensional. And then I just used a Zot glue dot to stick my flare badge down. I used one of the large ones. And now this little sticker has been moved around so much that it's lost a lot of its stickiness. So I just took my Tombow Mono multi-adhesive and put a tiny little dab of it there, and that will hold that heart in place, the little blue puffy heart in place on top of the flare badge. Now these are from my stash. They're from Freckled Fawn. There's a reading set of stickers from Freckled Fawn that I got from a couple of months ago in one of their kits. And it says currently reading, and that's that kind of peachy color of pink that's elsewhere in this collection. So I thought it worked really well, both thematically and from a design perspective. And now I'm just grabbing my typewriter and a Project Life grid card, and my ribbon was a little loose, so I just had to tighten it up there. And this is an old sewing machine that I got from a garage sale type of thing. There's a website. It's like Craigslist, but it's called Kijiji in Canada. And I'm writing the word book And I wrote it twice because at first I capitalized it and then I realized I didn't want it capitalized. And then I'm typing my journaling. My journaling says, just grabbing the layout here, it says, Sophie sitting in the early morning sun reading a book. ... makes me happy. And so I had an idea of how long I wanted each of those journaling strips to be. So I just composed my journaling on the fly, just making it the length that I wanted it to be and leaving spaces so that it would be easy for me to cut around it. I usually leave way too much space, but that's better than leaving not enough space. So here I am just cutting I took the word book and I used my Tombow Mono Multi and glued it onto the flare badge. And now I'm just taking my little strips of journaling and I'm cutting them out. And I never know whether I want to leave some space at the ends of it. Sometimes I leave space there for stapling or for, I don't know, doing something with. But I decided to trim them all down nice and tight. And I'm thinking about what else can go in this corner. I like the idea of bringing some more of that dark blue down there, but that flower sticker that you just saw me put there for a second is just way too big and bulky, and it's throwing the balance of the layout off. I like this one a little bit better. It's the same size sticker, but the lighter colors make it not have quite as much weight. And one of those hearts is just a little bit not printed properly, and so you'll see that the foil on it is not quite as nice as the rest of the stickers are, and I'm going to fix that by layering another puffy sticker on top of it. So here's a puffy sticker over here. I just want to bring your eye over to the end parts of the journaling, and that little pink heart covers up the little imperfection in that gold heart sticker. And I'm sorry that I forgot to zoom out for this part. I don't remember what I'm doing. Oh yes, I went into the ephemera pack and I just felt like I needed a third element over here besides the tag and the flare badge. And here I am just adding a roller date stamp that says July something, 2016. And I'm just kind of stamping it over and over and over again. And I wanted it to go up closer to the flare badge, so I just added a couple more stamps. And I'm just using my adhesive remover tool there was a little blob of discolored adhesive there. And now here I am. I thought, I really like the layout as it is. And I thought it could use splatter or it could not use splatter. It really looks awesome without it. And maybe I shouldn't have done this. You'll see why. So I'm splattering navy blue Mr. Huey's. And I don't like how that's coming out. And for some reason, it's really bubbly and frothy and kind of thick. I don't know if maybe it's too old or something, but it's not splattering exactly the way that I like my splatter to go. It's really frothy and as I mentioned, thick. But I love how it goes up here. And I'm going to put a little bit more here. So in those three places around the journaling, just down below the little cluster of 3 embellishments, and then up at the top of the title. And I'm just using my paper towel because it seems like it's taking forever for it to dry. And so I'm using my paper towel to blot it, and I'm just going to remove it entirely from the washi tape because it won't dry there, because it's a non-porous surface. And now I'm using Heidi Swapp Gold. So I'm picking up on the blue and the gold that's already the main 2 colors in the layout. And I'm splattering lots of gold. I love how the Heidi Swapp splatters. It looks really beautiful. But I'm really not too pleased with how the splatter looks that's right below the photo. So I'm going to show you how you can fix that kind of thing. The thing about splatter is that I usually like to not fix it because that's part of using splatter, is that you can't control it. But it just looks so messy here. Look at it. Ugh, it doesn't look very nice. And the gold mixed with the blue because I wasn't patient enough to wait for it. And so I cut a little patch. And you can't always do this, but every once in a while you'll be able to get away with it depending on the kind of pattern paper that you've used. And so see how I I made my outline. I'm going to try to match up the outlining and the sewing on this little patch and just cover up the part with the splatter that I don't like. It's a total cheater way to fix your splatter if you don't like it. Like I said, you can't always get away with this because certain pattern papers are going to be more obvious than others that you did a patchwork. But with such a subtle pattern as this one, it's just tiny, tiny little hearts on a white background. I thought if ever I could get away with doing a patch, now is the time. So I patched it up, and as you can see, I made new splatters, and I really love those two big blobs of gold splatter that landed down there. I'm still not entirely happy with the blue down there. It's still not awesome, but I do like it better than the first time around, and the blue and the gold stayed separate this time, so that's good. Look at that title. I really love how it turns out. I love how the My Girl script combines with the font of Loves to Read. And here's that other little cluster of the tag and the flare badge with the little heart peeking out. And I didn't add too much in my embellishment clusters. There's basically just that one and then this one down here. And I tried to keep it pretty simple so that the focus would be on the photo strip and on that beautifully arranged title. I just love, well done, Fancy Pants. I mean, wow, that is a great combination of fonts right there that come in that collection. So thanks so much for watching. And if you, the only thing that I didn't get to mention in this video was that you could always create your own photo strip by stacking your photos on a piece of white cardstock and then trimming it down so that there's a thin border around it. And that would give you another way to do a photo strip if you don't get your photos printed the way that mine come out. So thanks so much for watching. If you find yourself in a creative rut and lacking some scrappy mojo, try using a photo strip as your starting point for your next layout, and let me know how it goes by tagging me in it if you share it anywhere on social media. Thanks again, and have a really great scrappy week.